Thank you, Bill. Hello, everyone. I am Ciara Campbell, City Innovation Programme Officer in Belfast City Council. I have worked with the best of local tech talent to deliver the Smart Belfast programme, and more recently the Belfast Region City Deal and the Smart District Ambitions. My colleagues Jane Brady and Deborah Colville plan to share more around this later today. Bill asked me to come today and to share some real life examples of where IoT is presently being used in Belfast. The guys who've come before me are really technically astute. I am not, but I've worked with an awful lot of people that are. So I'm going to share some of that learning with you. Before I do, one of the things that I would mention is the Belfast approach. We tend to follow, our approach to innovation is that we use a quadruple helix model. Now that's a really fancy name, and what it actually means is that we are bringing together the citizen, businesses, the best of our academia, our local disruptors, our innovators and inventors to thrash out a problem, to do design-led understanding and to shape solutions that are really fit for purpose. What that means for the city is that we are not technology-led. We don't find a new gadget and want to implement it. We want real solutions to real urban problems. So that's where we're coming from. Oh, sugar. Sorry, guys. I have two mice going at the same time here. What I would say is, well, the city is increasingly pursuing economic growth that is innovative, inclusive, and sustainable, while also dealing with social and environmental challenges such as tackling climate change, improving public health and well-being, and adjusting to demographic changes. And this is not even to mention a global pandemic. We are progressively moving towards mission-oriented innovation. And if you're interested in learning more of that, I would recommend reading up on Mariana Mazzucato's work. So there is no doubt that cities present an ideal test bed at scale to experiment with innovative approaches, technologies and policies with a strong potential for ecosystem-based adaptation and mitigation. When we're looking to develop a smart city, a smart district within our smart city, we're talking about having an innovation sandbox up and running as a precursor. We've run a number of smart city demonstrators, which some of you might already be well aware of, and I'm going to rattle through a few of these. I've already mentioned that we take a challenge-based approach to innovation. And this is really interesting. Innovation theory suggests that we should crunch big data, and that will help us identify problems and where we should be focusing our attention. And these are known as data-driven insights to find solutions. In reality, what I have experienced is that the data crunching often follows an anecdotal observation. In other words, someone with the skills to code and develop devices and take it to the next level, something has really peed them off. The solutions tend to come about their life hacks to problems that the individuals have had. And I'm going to start by saying if you are a student or an SME or someone interested in IoT, you probably don't want to go competing with the big boys. You might have some lovely facial recognition software or some mobility data based on an app, but are you going to be able to compete with organizations that have 1.9 to 2 billion users a month? Possibly not, although they might buy up your solutions. What I would also say is don't assume that markets are saturated. From a public sector point of view, we have frequently gone out to the market to procure what we feel should be shelf-ready IoT innovations. And what we find is there are a lot of companies that are saying they have this IoT, but when you get down into the nitty-gritty and you try to buy at mass, they don't actually exist. So definitely do your research. Now, I'm going to start to speak about a challenge to do with urban mobility. So we all know that cities are growing at an exponential rate, that those pressures on our finite resources, on our infrastructure, our water, our energy, they're becoming increasingly apparent, and we need to start putting interventions into place now that can alleviate some of those problems. Traffic congestion is one of them. And with traffic congestion, you have, it slows productivity, it makes your workers unhappy. People do not enjoy sitting in traffic on their daily commute. And there's a disproportionate road space allocated to freight deliveries and private car. And one thing that we see as being able to shift this is a modal change. So if we could get more people out of the private individual car and onto, say, micro-mobility solutions and active mobility, such as walking, cycling, and even potentially scooters, and looking at innovative ways of transporting goods, such as drone deliveries and robot deliveries. So I'm going to share with you a use case that was developed in collaboration with BT, who provided us access to their citywide LoRaWAN network, with DFI, Department for Infrastructure, who helped us understand the legislative landscape, PSNI, who had their own challenges with bikes and traffic, etc. And then local company C-Sense, so Philip McAleese. And we're back to this passion project. Philip was fed up with people nearly knocking him down off his bike. It was very dangerous, but he was also a highly skilled electrical engineer. And what he developed was a device that would not only help the city map the journeys that these city bikes were taking, but also to better understand the experience of the cyclists on the bikes. So what speed were they going? Would there be sudden stops? What's the quality of the road like? Are they being thrown off the bikes due to potholes? So I'll show you some of these outputs. So these IoT devices communicated with LoRaWAN, and what you're seeing on the screen here is a lot of individual dots showing us where the bikes have been. The next step on these micro journeys, well, we knew there was micro journeys. These are very short trips. What we weren't so aware of is the longer journeys. And the next slide. And what we're seeing in this particular map, you can see the origin and destination of the longer trips. And we're seeing some people taking Belfast bikes from Queen's University and travelling all the way up into Titanic Quarter in Belfast. What this told us as a city is that there is a need. There are people needing to use the bikes up in this area in Titanic Quarter, but there is not currently a provision. So using this information, we were able to petition to have a docking station put in Titanic Quarter, which is now one of the most popular docking stations. So those are insights. What we're also seeing when we gather big data is unbiased information. So for public sector, we would frequently go out and do non-digital surveys. We basically would ask the cycle users about their habits. And Sustrans, they recently did a Bike Like survey. And one of the surveys that was done, we asked users of the Belfast bikes, where do you cycle? And nearly invariably, they told us in cycle lanes. But what we find when we analyse the data is actually no, there's an awful lot of them that are using the pavements as bike lanes. And this is important because what it's telling us is there's not adequate supply of bike lanes in Belfast. And that helps the lobbyists to go to DFI and say, please, we need more bike lanes, make it easy for us. So moving on to the next slide. Again, a personal problem. The guy on the left is Matt from Allstate. Matt got in touch with us for a few reasons. One was that he was really frustrated that the bike data was not being made openly available. He would really have liked to have access to it, as would a lot of students, because it would enable them to further their data scientist ambitions. he was extremely frustrated because he frequently wanted to use the Belfast bikes, but by the time he got to a docking station, there were none available. So being a skilled programmer, AI specialist, machine learning, what Matt did was he gleaned the information from the websites. He said, this is open data. It's not in a machine readable format, but I'm going to go ahead and glean this data. So he got a few months worth of data that allowed him then to apply machine learning and be able to predict whether there would be a bike available for him. Now, Bill isn't on telling me off. I'm supposed to speak about IoT alone because these big concepts have already been covered by actual experts in the field, including Austin Tanney and various other people. But the point that I would like to make is that when you have IoT, you have environmental sensing happening, you have big data, layering on other technical solutions can really add an awful lot of exponential value. So what Matt in Allstate was able to do was come up with a predictive model. Will there be a bike there in 30 minutes? In fact, he took it further and he had a little widget created on his desktop, which advised him, if you want a bike, and of course, his model is taking into account all of the variables that affect people using the bikes, the time of day, what the weather conditions are, what day of the week it is, all of these things factored in, and it would tell him this would be a good time to leave and use the bike. Now, he has shared this with all his colleagues in Allstate, and so the Belfast Bike Scheme is pretty much serving Allstate a lot better than any other employer in the area, which is something we're going to have to address. I don't think they'll mind. So Adrian had spoken earlier about air quality. Air quality is the world's biggest environmental risk. 4.2 million deaths happen each year because of air pollution. You can have a look at this graphic. It's from the World Health Organization, and it breaks down just the extent of this is a pandemic as well. So as a public authority, obviously we are interested in trying to preserve the health of our citizens and also bringing innovation, data and digital to the fore. So working with a small group of companies, a collaborative group, 4 different SMEs that had very different skill sets came together to create first of all, an air quality monitoring solution, and then an intervention, which I'm going to go into. So air quality monitoring is actually, it's a really sophisticated, tricky field, and Adrian touched on that earlier. The specialist, now in Belfast, we have 4 air quality monitoring stations. These are best in field, really expensive, highly accurate, and frequently recalibrated, and they would cost in the region of 250,000 to £500,000. So really sophisticated machinery. Our guys run air quality monitoring, which has been hit upon with the Edge solutions. It is really heavy use of computational functionality, and we would like to be able to get to a point where we can decrease the computational requirements and have much more frequent, granular, real-time access to air quality information. And the next slide will explain this. What you're seeing here is a geospatial temporal visualization of traffic-related air pollution in Belfast. We're using NO2 as a proxy for all traffic-related air pollution. And what you're seeing, that thick red line is where NO2 values are fairly high. And you can probably identify that these are on our main motorways. So you can see the West Link curving up on the left-hand side, and on the right there, you see the M2, M3 and M5. There's a lot of traffic in those areas. And really, if we want to tackle air pollution, the best way to do that is to remove it at source by reducing the number of vehicles, especially the diesel and petrol vehicles. electric vehicles and potentially hydrogen fueled vehicles. We'll be seeing more of those in the future. So, while it's very difficult to put the legislation in place to just wipe vehicles off the road, what this company sought to do was put the power back in the hands of the citizen, give them the information to allow them to make healthy choices about their routes, what routes they will take from their point of origin to their destination, what is the route that will minimise their exposure to these harmful air pollutants, and also what is the best mode of transport for them. Is it walking, is it cycling, or is it in a vehicle? And what the scientists have told us is that invariably biking and walking is always better. What you're seeing on this diagram, the underlying assumption is the walker is very slow, so they're very slowly walking through the air pollution, and that's why it's alerting that there might be too much exposure. This kind of analysis and these kind of tools are more important now than what they were even this time last year. Following on from COVID, we will have a lot of people recovered, but with permanent lung damage. These people will need to really manage their exposure to pollutants that could exacerbate symptoms for them. So the IoT sector in Belfast is actually thriving, I think, but having had a conversation with Bill and the fact that he's the KNOS expert in IoT and isn't aware of the meetup scene and the tech scene makes me think we need to do a little bit more with our communications. So I'm going to share with you some links. Around 2 years ago, Belfast City Council, along with Invest NI and the Ulster University, and a cohort of other councils, managed to get a free-to-use LoRaWAN IoT network initially for the city, but it's actually been rolled out across the entire region. So if we have students, enthusiasts, or SMEs that want to create IoT devices, test them out, scale them up, please look to the Things Connected by Ulster University and you can get free access to this system. Joe Rafferty, who heads that up, has kindly provided this QR code. So I'm letting this slide hover a little bit longer than I normally would. So if you want to take a screenshot and link to that code, you're very welcome. There is a thriving meetup scene that meets, it usually meets monthly at the likes of Farset Labs, Catalyst Inc., and various other co-working spaces which are thriving. Think of the Ormo Baths as well. These are very casual meetups. They're usually a great lineup of speakers from industry. I can't recommend them highly enough. So here's just a little graphic showing you the coverage of the LoRaWAN network in Northern Ireland. And there you can get the link to where you can get on to the network. And there's usually a host of challenge competitions around this with money to help people get started. If you're interested in other Belfast City Innovation use cases, I would recommend you go to our website, smartbelfast.city, where we have quite a lot of our already delivered use cases available to pick your interest. So, I am Ciara Campbell. If you have any further questions, please get in touch with me. I'm also on Twitter at Ciara G. Campbell. Looking forward to hearing from you.